Welcome to the Main Street Minute with equestrian marketing expert India Wilkinson. This is the destination for all things equestrian, from horse sales, breeding, horse health, and a look into the intricacies of the horse business world. Join India as she dives in with industry leaders to discuss the challenging and rewarding lifestyle of being in the equestrian world. And get ready for the Main Street Minute.
Hi there, this is India Wilkinson with the Main Street Minute, and we are so excited to welcome Sarah Halverson today with H Spur Performance Horses. So welcome, Sarah. I think I met you through Main Street Market, and you listed a couple of horses with us. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your business? I love following you. I think you're so real. And I love that you involve your son and show him on the ponies. So just tell us a little bit about what you do and we'll go from there.
Well, thank you for having me on here. H Spur Horses is comprised of myself, my husband, Alex, and then our son, Stetson. You know, we probably sell an average of 20 horses a year, but we do a multitude of things with them. So we don't always have, you know, a large number in because we're using them outside, or we're going to go show them, or I'm jumping them because that's my one true love. So if a ranch horse shows an ability, I go and jump them. You know, we just want to focus on well-rounded horses that have had a real life job where they have to go work a 9-to-5 outside, but then they can go do the arena stuff to whatever capability, you know, level they're able to, whether it's just loping circles and piddling around or going to go show. And then obviously my draft crosses are normally my jumpers. Like the last one was Leroy, a big Clyde cross, and we got all the way up to 4 foot. And that's just something that's fun for me. But I want people to be able to look at our horses and say, oh, I do this, I can still use them for this. You know, a horse having one job doesn't work for me at all, because I like doing a multitude of things, and I know other people do.
Well, and I think that is why your horses are such a good fit on Main Street Market, because they are so versatile, and you expose your horses to so many things, which I think is really cool, especially for the amateur rider that maybe wants to go show, but also wants to trail ride. And but today's topic, it's kind of a hot topic. Today we want to talk about things that have changed in the selling process. And you sell a lot of horses yourself, but you also help market horses for auctions and other organizations as well. So you are really in it. So you deal with a lot of buyers. And I see a lot, and I know there's a rumor that, you know, the current market is pretty tough. And we've seen a difference in, you know, how buyers are behaving, how sellers are marketing their horses. Horses are definitely selling. We're seeing them on Main Street Market. We see them out there. Horses are definitely selling. But what are some of the challenges that you've experienced maybe in the last year that have changed? Because I've definitely seen a shift in how things are, the communication between buyers and sellers. And so what are the challenges that you've experienced in that?
I honestly think things have gotten more showy within the last couple of years. I mean, I remember when an iPhone picture and a 30-second video, you know, taken on your iPhone in, you know, portrait mode could get a horse sold any day of the week. And that was all that you needed. But now professional type pictures and videos are something that you have to have for an everyday ad instead of, you know, just like a bigger catalog sale, which is what they were typically reserved for. And so now, you know, everyone looks professional because they have the professional pictures and the professional videos. And I think that the buyers get overwhelmed because there's a lot of repetitiveness, because everybody is trying to do the next big thing or copy someone off of their success, you know, of like riding the horse through town or making it go over a bridge or carry an umbrella on its back. You know, I think buyers anymore are just overwhelmed by the repetitiveness, and because of the repetitiveness, they're looking for deals, which is where the scammers come into play. And the scammers have been huge for the last year for me, of, you know, listing horses that I've had previously listed for a fraction of the cost, you know, or sometimes I'll have a horse posted and listed, and a scammer will go steal the pictures, take the watermark off, and list it for a third of the price. I even made a sale from a scammer this year because they listed a VS Code Blue horse I had for $3,500. And the lady reverse searched his image on Google and found him listed with me for 12.5 and actually ended up buying them. So it worked out. But, the scammers and it's been insane for the last year. And it makes buyers scared that someone's actually a real person and actually owns the horse now.
I am actually so glad you brought that up. And it's not something that I had even thought about talking today, but it's a huge issue for buyers and for sellers. And on the seller side, I see it. I see the copies of photos and creating new pages and asking for deposits, which many legitimate sellers do ask for deposits. So it's really
we did for a long time, just to save us. But now the deposits scare everybody away because they think you don't own the horse.
Right. So that's a problem. And I think that is something that we do need to address with buyers. We've had potential scammers on Main Street Market, and we put in basically firewalls now so that they can't get on there, and we can track IP addresses and we can block them. But we're an online business, so it is a little bit easier. It's not fun, but we do have the technology that we can block them, but that doesn't work in real life situations. So we hadn't really planned to talk about this, but let's talk a little bit about how we can help buyers kind of vet out the scammers. I know the language. I see it now. It's a lot of AI stuff that scammers are using. I also see that they'll say kind of really bizarre things about the horse, what it's able to do. And it's, as a real horse person who knows the language, you can detect it. But there's some of them that are pretty savvy. So what are some things that you would suggest for buyers to vet those out?
And it's like you said, the ads that have like the broken English or don't describe a horse in its job correctly, and I have to go find an ad to get the verbiage that they use sometimes. But some ads have major red flags right off the bat. But if you go
if you enjoyed today's episode, please let us know. Email support@mainstreetmarket.com. And join us again next time for another episode of the Main Street Minute with India Wilkinson right here on the Equus Radio Network.
Ohio Family and Trail Horses. They're one of the ones that typically steal my photos, and they get AI to remove my watermark from my videos and my pictures and everything like that. And they'll use the horse's original ad from when it was posted, but change its name. And, when you see professional pictures and an ad with a horse named Bunny, that definitely looks like it could be a papered horse, ask them to see a set of papers, ask them to send you a picture with the horse. If you never know what those people look like, and from them removing watermarks, you can't ever match up the pictures with the correct owners, just tell them to send you a picture of a horse, FaceTime them, use technology against them, make them prove that they have the horse before you ever send a deposit or before you ever really get into a conversation with them.
I think that's a really good point. And also, legitimate sellers will get on the phone. They want to get on the phone with you, and they'll do FaceTime. And I think that's like the number one thing is ask to get on the phone with somebody to talk about the horse. And that's just a good rule in general, to get on the phone with the seller, to ask about the horse and not just do everything through private message or through text.
Absolutely. And, private message and texting is, so easy for us to jump on there, plug a number in, say, hey, my name is so-and-so. I'm looking at this horse. What can you tell me about him? Get 5 minutes and just call the number. And if the number just beeps or goes to like an empty voicemail with no greeting or anything like that, just maybe leave them a voicemail and they'll call you back. But if you never hear from them or they send you a weird text, just move on. Because if anybody calls about a horse I have, it's typically an hour-long conversation, because I want to know where they live, how they ride, what they're looking for, and to make sure my horse is a fit for them, not that they're a fit for my horse, because the horses always come first. So I got to make sure that the home that's interested in my product is the right place for them. And that's what all good sellers truly want, is for their horses to land where they're supposed to be. So if you call a scammer and they can't tell you anything, move on.
Yeah, I love that. And typically they won't get on the phone. I've noticed when I've called, it's like a Google number or something that's clearly not legitimate. But in general, I think the shift in the market, buyers they do have a lot of challenges themselves, with dealing, making sure that legitimate legitimate sellers. And like you said, there is so much out there, and just trying to sort through all of that. But I've definitely noticed, and I've seen people comment and talk about it on social media with pre-purchase exams, and really expecting perfection out of those pre-purchase exams, where I feel like it used to be, if this horse, can he do the job right now? And what maintenance will he need in the future, is kind of where that has been my experience in pre-purchase exams. And it seems that now they're expecting perfections. They want x-rays of everything. And they also want to know what the resale will be, instead of focusing on what that job can be right now. Is that something that you're seeing in buyers?
A ton. And I think that comes from, there's been kind of a shift in the veterinarian world too for PPEs, because a lot of vets have been sued previously because they said the horse was serviceably sound with this maintenance and everything like that. And then later on down the road, the horse is, not sound. He comes up lame. And all of a sudden the buyer blames the vet, instead of blaming themselves for not taking care of the horse. But I think a lot of, wanting pristine x-rays and pristine PPEs comes from a lack of education, and there being a lot of misconception around some of the findings, like if a horse has mild arthritis, if it's not affecting it in its current workload, and your workload or what you're going to be using it for is comparable to what the horse is currently doing, you're probably never going to notice a difference in the horse. Maybe when it gets a little bit older, you have to put it on some Previcox or something like that. But if you can't afford a $35 bottle of generic Previcox, then maybe you need to look at something, that's maybe priced a little higher, because clean x-rays cost, especially on a finished show horse, because they're so rare. I mean, I don't own a single horse that is a personal horse, or one that I've ever considered a personal horse, that didn't have something shown on x-rays. But 90% of the time, it never affected them in their day-to-day life or their day-to-day workload. Until you popped up the x-ray machine, you would have never known they had it, whether it was a small chip in a hock or some mild arthritis in a hock or something like that,
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point, where if every horse I've ever vetted, something has come up. And it's always been, well, can that horse do that job that I need it to do now? And maybe it can do the job even with maintenance. Maybe the hocks need to be injected, or like you said, it has to be on Previcox or something. But I think in general, buyers, and I know that it's a big investment, we're making big investments, but the general consensus is that buyers have gotten away from realizing that these horses are animals, and they're athletes, and they work hard every day, and they are going to need maintenance in order to do those jobs. And the feeling is that buyers have gotten demanding for sellers, and wanting that perfection, and not having more of a realist attitude about it. Is that kind of what you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, I'm 26 years old and I require maintenance, but I can still go do my day-to-day job. I can still ride without pain and everything like that. And I think I've noticed that more of the buyers that won't ever use a horse to its full capacity are the ones that want the pristine x-rays, because they think that means that the horse is perfectly okay, but a little mild arthritis in a hock, when you plan to go trail ride 3 miles, 3 times a week, probably isn't ever going to affect that horse. And, if you pop a Advil pill in the morning, give your horse a little Previcox and it'll be okay. I mean, it's one of those deals that, I love clean x-rays, but I have only had one horse in my life, from a 2-year-old to an 18-year-old, that has ever had clean x-rays. And he only had clean x-rays because he never did anything with his life or put forth enough effort to make his x-rays dirty per se, or have a chip or something. But like with our horses, when we go and use them outside, the likelihood that something will eventually show on an x-ray goes up exponentially, whether it's a chip from a slip, or some mild arthritis in their hocks from stopping so hard and roping, or maybe there's a slight navicular change on the head horse on his left front because he is constantly going to the left and planting that lead foot. It's just one of those deals that if you want a good horse, there's probably something that's going to be shown on the x-ray, but it's more than likely manageable. And if that horse checks every other box for you, don't let a little mild arthritis or something that's insignificant detour you from the horse, because if it's not a current issue for them, it may never be, and you just don't know. And that's part of owning horses. A vet could tell you that, they could need maintenance a year from now. Well, you could buy that horse in a week from now. They could get an upset stomach and colic and cost you tens of thousands of dollars on a surgery. It's just part of owning them.
I think that's such a fair thing to say too. And we forget it could be that horse that you buy with the perfect x-rays. And like you said, 2 weeks later, colics or has a pasture accident. I mean, we're always taking risks in the equestrian world. And I just have always liked the vets who have told me, like, this horse can do the job now and he's safe. And that's how my attitude has been, like, let's go for now and we'll worry about it on the road.
Absolutely. And I think if buyers were honest with the vets doing the PPE of saying, hey, this is what I want this horse to do. This is how much I'm going to ride it. Can it do this job? Everybody has shied away from serviceably sound for probably the last 5 years, I feel like. And every horse on my property is serviceably sound, to my knowledge, because I'm sure if you took an x-ray to multiple of them, there's something that's going to be shown, but you don't see it on the day-to-day. And I think if a horse can do its intended job and makes you happy, if it's something that you can live with, get the horse, because it's not a PPEs aren't pass or fail. It's a fact-finding mission to figure out what you can live with or what you can't live with, or what maintenance you can provide, or what's simply out of budget, because obviously horses are a big expense, the purchase price alone. And then if you need to inject them once or twice a year, that's another added expense that some people need to account for. So they need to just go to a PPE as a fact-finding mission of what can you live with as an owner and what does the horse need.
I love that. That was so perfectly said. I love it. All right. So if you could tell buyers 5 things, and I know we could probably say 20, but if you could just condense it in 5 things that would help them in their buying process, what would you tell them?
I think first off, if a buyer gives you a bunch of material on a horse to be able to read through and look at or watch, use that to your advantage. They're giving you every opportunity to truly shop the horse. And most of the questions that you probably have right off the bat can be answered within the complete ad, within the videos or anything like that. And you might come up with questions that you never thought of, but because you watched the video and you didn't see any left lead transitions, you might ask them and say, hey, how are their transitions this way? But, for me as a seller, when I try to give everybody as much information as possible, and it probably sounds like I'm rambling, I make a YouTube playlist that typically has over an hour worth of videos on every horse, from picking up their feet to saddling to just everything in general, because I want people to go and watch it. I want them to go and see if they might like the horse, or if they like their personality, like how they move. So when they call me, we can have a more in-depth conversation about what they're wanting and what they're needing and everything like that.
I love that. Yeah. Is there anything else that you would add to that?
Yeah, I've got quite a few points, but I think another big thing is to be honest with all parties about what you're wanting, but most importantly, be honest with all parties, including yourself, about what you need. Because I want an imported warm blood that can cruise 1.5 meter course with no problem. But guess what? I don't need that, because my ability is not there, and it would not look good if we would end up crashing through a fence or something, because that's simply not what I need. Even though I want it really bad, it's just not simply the horse that I need right now. So I think if people were a little more honest with them, and especially sellers, it would be a much more fruitful experience for everybody, so they could get on the same page, and back to the PPEs. If you're going to get a PPE, get the PPE, don't just have the horse flex, get the x-rays, have everything checked, have blood drawn and tested if you want to make sure that the horse has no drugs in their system, use it to your advantage of what it's supposed to be, which is a fact-finding mission. So if you're already going to pay the money to go have the horse trotted, pay the extra $40 per x-ray and, have them shot just so you can see. And, with that, be realistic on what your buying capabilities will get you in today's market. We all want that show winner that's a bald-faced beauty with a stack pedigree that has that squeaky clean PPE that's never going to need maintenance in its life, that's in the prime of its life age-wise, that's, only $5,000. But what you're going to actually get for $5,000 is probably something you're going to regret owning, or something that needs the maintenance, that doesn't have the squeaky clean PPE, or something that you can just go trail ride on the weekends and enjoy. Good horses are bringing good prices, and that goes for the prospects included. And I'd argue that prospects are bringing even more money because of the potential that they still have, since they're not a finished product. And so people that are paying for that potential clearly don't see the market coming down anytime soon, because they're buying 2 and 3 year olds for the same amount of money, if not more, than finished show horses. So if the people with the big bags of money don't see the market coming down anytime soon, I'm inclined to think that it's not going to crash. But we've been sitting around waiting every single year saying the sky's going to fall. So if you're holding on to your $5,000 budget thinking that you're going to get a show winner, I would, focus on saving up a little more and just looking at it, because I don't think this market's going to come down.
No, and especially because it's more and more and more expensive to keep horses, to train horses. Those expenses aren't going anywhere. So
no, and breeders and trainers finally started asking prices of horses, or upping their training prices so that it could be a viable business for them. Everyone in the horse market or the horse industry got tired of losing money hand over fist. And so they finally asked what was truly invested into the horses, and it kind of woke people up on what it actually costs to get a show winner or performer out the door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right. So what is your favorite part of selling horses?
Honestly, it would be the horses. They're all different individuals. So every time that I get one and it's ready for them to go on the market, I've got to be a different voice for them, because they all need something different. They will all fit into a new home differently. And it's my job as their owner and as their representative to represent them as accurately as possible and tell the truth about them, so that they find that the home that they need to go to. And because all the horses are different individuals, they bring in different sets of buyers. And I've met some of the coolest people through my horses and have made lifelong connections. I mean, I still talk to a lady in North Carolina that I sold a horse to back in 2017, almost, at least once a month. So, I mean, I do it for the love of the horse. It's not for the love of the people or anything like that. It's for the love of the horse. And I love seeing them fit into new homes and prospering in them. It makes me extremely happy when they go on and do well with their new people. The horses will always be first on any list of mine. They come first always.
I love that, Sarah. That is so awesome. And it's got to be so rewarding when you do see them happy in their new homes, and knowing that you played a part in that matchmaking process, that the owner and the horses are happy.
Absolutely. And it's the whole reason I do what I do. I want to watch these horses thrive. Every horse that I sell is one that I would own for its entire lifetime. So I truly love them. So I truly want them to go to good homes, and I enjoy the people and enjoy the connections that they bring into my life. And I'm thankful and grateful that I get to do this.
Well, I love that. And we are definitely lucky in the equestrian world to have you. It's cool to hear how much you love them and how much you love what you do. And that's really my goal with this podcast, is to get to know the people behind the businesses and the brands. So thank you, Sarah, for joining us. We really appreciate you. And thank you, everyone, for listening to the Main Street Minute. And we will see you next time.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please let us know. Email support@mainstreetmarket.com. And join us again next time for another episode of the Main Street Minute with India Wilkinson, right here on the Equus Radio Network.